Today we'll be talking about upper body pulling movements. As with the pushes, we're going to cover a few different directions. The shoulder's a very articulate joint, can work a lot of different ways, so we want to cover the field there, or at least broadly. Vertical pull would include a chin-up, horizontal pull would be something like a row, and a vertical pull in the other direction might be something like a shrug or a clean pull. Otherwise, we might find something a little bit like a curl. We'll play around with the variations there. But that's going to be broadly what we're covering today. In addition to those three different directions, we'll also have a quick note on hanging and lever work, stuff like our front and back levers. That's a little bit more advanced, again, probably verging into the realm of gymnastics, which is a little bit beyond the scope of this introductory video series, but I'd like to at least flag them so you guys know they're out there, and if you want to build towards something like that long term, it can be a really fun goal.
Okay, here I'm going to demonstrate some different potential chin-up variations. We had two-arm close grip, archer, and one-arm chin-ups. These are all more advanced, but I just want you guys to understand that there are options. What I really wanted to show you was some important things for a regular chin-up. See there, I had the shoulders protracted, pulled way out in front. I want to retract and depress the scaps as I pull down so that I can pull the bar to the chest. I will not pull with elevated scaps. I want to depress at the start. Okay, I'm demonstrating this with a stick because it hurts to do it wrong with the bar. Here we see with the bar, I depress the scaps. You can practice that on its own first, and then we add in the rest of the movement, pulling with the lats and the elbows, lifting the chest up towards the bar. And that's a regular chin-up. Flip the hands, and that's a pull-up. Same deal. We want to depress first, maintain that depression, get a bit of retraction, all that good stuff. Wide grip. Oof, I'm a bit tired there. Could be a bit higher, but that's the position. Behind the head. That one's pretty tough too. I'm a little bit tired, but you can see the movement. That's how we pull. Behind the head is a bit more advanced. It will require a bit more flexibility through the shoulders. This one's probably the easiest one. Parallel grip, narrow-ish. A lot of people with poor shoulder mobility will still be able to do pull-ups in this fashion. So here we have an assisted chin-up machine. This one's really handy for those of you not quite strong enough to do some of the harder variations to still train the shoulders through those ranges. I could do a wide grip chin-up for a higher set of repetitions there because I wouldn't have to take my full body weight. Again, the narrow grip parallel one is a nice comfy variation for less flexible people. Maybe people with shoulder issues. One arm chin up with assistance, that's a bit of a joke, a bit of fun really. Realistically, this might be useful if you have a real imbalance from one side to the other, but generally that's a bit easier to address with a one-arm row variation. Or a lat pull-down variation. So this is another way to work a little bit lighter if you're a bit heavy and chin-ups are a bit unachievable at this stage. We can play with a lat pull-down. Notice that I'm trying to pull all the way towards my chest. I'm not aiming to, or the back of my neck. I'm not aiming to pull it down low on my sternum. I'm not aiming to internally rotate through the shoulders. I'm really squeezing the shoulder blades back and opening up through the front of my body. I'm not a big fan of the knee pad. If you really need a knee pad to hold you down during your chin-ups, then you're probably strong enough that you should be out doing, if you need a knee pad during your lat pull down, then you're probably strong enough that you should be doing some chin-up variations. So there's the underhand one. You can do those wide grip overhand or narrower grip underhand. Those are the two main variations I'd play with on a lat pull down. Now we have the seated row. I'm a big fan of the cable row, not with elevated scaps like that, keeping it nice and depressed. The narrow grip tends to make it a bit hard to get a full retraction, but I'm a big fan of that grip to work on some one-arm rowing and get a little bit of rotation work in there as well. Nice quantifiable way to work on our one-arm row. So I'm a big fan of the cable row because it doesn't really load the back so hard. What I mean by that is your lower back. If we do barbell rowing variations, they tend to be quite tough on the lower back, which is fine, except we're already working those with other movements. So here you see I'm using the wider grip attachment there, and it just makes it a little bit easier to get some retraction at the back end. I'm practicing with just the scaps first, showing you guys the retraction, and then adding in the elbows, pulling back as far as I can, really getting a solid retraction. That's a very strict row. You can see my spine's not really moving. Here we can see I'm adding in a bit of hip movement, so you can get a little bit of momentum from the glutes and the hamstrings. and that can help you lift some heavier weight. You see, I'll chuck the pin down low, chuck 1,000,000 kilos on there, and I can row much heavier. I can either do that strict, or I can do that with a little bit of movement from the hips to make it easier. As you can see here, boom, there we go, tossing from the hips. I'd advise you to learn how to do it strict first, but then it's always a good option if you need to overload to add in an extra hip. Watch that it's not just coming from elbow flexion. We actually want the elbows to travel back. It comes from the shoulder blades. We also don't want to elevate here, okay? We're keeping the shoulders down and pulling the elbows back, not letting the shoulders come up or pulling the hands towards the shoulders. That's how we do a good row. Boom. This is a common fault. Lots of momentum out of the front, not really getting a good contraction at the back. Think more like a bodybuilder when we're doing seated rows. We're really trying to target the muscles back in between the shoulder blades. We're not just trying to move the handle from the front to the back. Now moving on to the one arm row. This is a great variation for developing grip and for addressing asymmetry as well. Notice again, my elbow's traveling back a little bit. I'm not just pulling my hand straight up towards my shoulder. That would be more of a bicep curl. Generally, we'll start this on the weaker hand and do whatever number of reps you're going to complete on that hand before switching to the stronger hand. This one's a pretty great movement. If you do it in succession, back and forth, one side then the other side, it's actually quite a good cardiovascular movement as well. And a different variation of one arm row, if you don't happen to have a bench handy, this one's perfectly good. It's basically the same movement. Obviously it's a bit more upright there because that bench is quite high, but you don't even need a bench. You could lean on anything, you could lean on your leg. It's a perfectly good one arm row variation. So now to barbell rowing. As I said before, I'm not a huge fan of barbell rowing because often the hamstrings and lower back are working so hard just to hold in place that tires you out. But here you see I did 2 strict, 2 with a bit of momentum, and then 2 a bit more upright. They're all perfectly valid variations. But I do find that you don't really want to move that lower back too much, and it tends to be a weak link in the chain. So we're still trying to work from the shoulder blades first. As we are in this inverted row variation, this is basically the same pattern that you'll see in a moment on the TRX, but you don't need a TRX to do it. If you have a low bar to hang off, you can put your feet on something, or even a higher bar and you can put your feet on something high. You can keep your scaps depressed, retract them, and pull your hands towards your chest. Here we are with the TRX. It's exactly the same pattern, just applied in a different setting. The more vertical I am, the more weight's going down from my feet, the easier. While I'm here, I figure I might as well demonstrate. That's more like a fly. And here we have something more like a face pull. And that's what's called a Y. So another name for the one where I had the hands come apart at shoulder height was a T. You can do T's, Y's, and W's. It's a common shoulder rehab tool. And there's just a regular inverted row on the rings. It's the same as it was with the bar, and the same as it was with the TRX. Now for the other type of vertical pull, we have the shrugging motion. Simple scapular elevation with a barbell there. You can do that with a wider grip, or you can come in quite narrow. You're going to see here I'm going to do an upright row. This movement is not broadly loved because of the flexibility requirements, but I found that I trained these a lot with my teenagers, and I trained a lot when I was younger doing some of these motions, and my shoulders did not suffer for them. If you do have any shoulder problems, I'd look out for it. There I demonstrated a bit of a shrug with some hip drive, and again, same thing with a snatch grip shrug, so that's like a clean pull or a snatch pull. Boom. As you can see how that translates into a power clean later on, or how that might translate into a power snatch. That vertical pull and shrug are going to be a big component of the Olympic lifts. So even the deadlift involves some isometric work through the traps. The bicep curl. I'm going to count this as a vertical pull. Obviously it's an isolated movement, but it's such a staple. I actually think that these are useful for keeping your wrists stable and keeping your scap stable. You can see I'm demonstrating a terrible cheek curl with partial range of motion and a lot of hip drive there, but I don't actually do these in my program these days, but I do find them useful for some clients who want to actually maintain flat wrists. We don't want to turn pulls or shrugs into curls, so we're aiming to point the knuckles down rather than back. Here I'm demonstrating, what am I demonstrating? Hanging leg raise, so that's a toes to bar. I'm not very good at these because of my flexibility. It's more like an ankles to bar, so that's something I need to work on. An easier version there is just a straight hanging leg raise to 90 degrees. That's a bit of fun as well. A bit of ab work as well as a bit of shoulder work, and then an easier version again, now demonstrating with the tuck. That's a knee raise, hanging knee raise. Just to see that from another angle, we have hanging leg raise, which I'm almost turning into a bit of a front lever because of my poor flexibility, but you get the idea. Pulling the legs right up. So that's trying to be a toes to bar. And we have hanging leg raise. I'm going a little bit higher than 90 degrees there. Thought I'd challenge myself slightly. And then there's the bent knee version, which is a little bit easier. So with body weight exercises, we can create a longer lever, which makes things more challenging. Look, I got a nice swollen left ankle on that day. Happened to roll my ankle a few days before. So this is a lot of fun. Alright. And now I'm going to demonstrate the passive hang. Note that I'm pretty chilled out. You can do a few different things here, play around and entertain yourself, but really, what am I doing? I'm just getting my shoulders used to a bit of traction, and I'm hanging from the bar. The more time you can accumulate in this kind of position, the better, to some extent. It's going to help open up through the front of your shoulder. You can see I'm playing around with a bunch of different stuff there, elevating and depressing and wiggling around a little bit, but really, it's great for your grip, and it's great for the shoulder joint, just to get a bit of traction and just a bit of time where you're just hanging there passively, not necessarily working on chin-ups or anything that's challenging. Here I'm tucking through to, what's that? Oh, I'm playing with the back lever. That's a tough one. Holding the body nice and straight. And I'll attempt the front lever here. Ugh, falling down right away. Don't quite have the strength on that day. So those last two are a bit more gymnastic movements, but they're just another option once you get a little bit more advanced in your upper body pulling.